Good evening. It's Thursday, February 25th, 2016, and this is a special broadcast from the alumni offices of Cornell University. I'm Ashley Budd, and this evening I'm speaking with two alumni, Adel and Kai, MPA class of 2007, now head of policy at Pinterest, and Randall Davies, class of 95, and current VP of Business and Corporate Development for UA Connected Fitness at Under Armour. We'll chat about their connection to Cornell and the upcoming marquee event for Cornell Silicon Valley known as CSV 16. The Bay Area of California is home to the largest concentration of Cornell alumni in the Western United States. Many of these alumni, as well as parents and friends of the university, work in the fields of technology and entrepreneurship in the place the world defines as Silicon Valley. So Cornell Silicon Valley, or CSV, is providing educational and networking opportunities throughout the Bay Area with programs based in Silicon Valley, downtown San Francisco, the Peninsula, and the South Bay. CSV 16 is an event that will be held at the Computer History Museum in Mountain View, and that's on March 8th. Attendees of this event will hear from industry leaders and connect with Cornell alumni whose innovations are changing the world. Cornellians will also have a chance to meet Adel and Randall, of course, along with other industry leaders, Cornell leadership, and faculty. For those tuning in live, we encourage you to share tonight's broadcast with alumni, parents, and friends. You can send questions for our guests using Twitter, using the hashtag CSV16, and I'll try to sneak them in, although I have lots of questions myself. We'll make this recording available for viewing after the live broadcast, and we'll have that on the Cornell Alumni YouTube channel and the CSV16 website. Today's broadcast is made possible by the Cornell Alumni Association, Cornell Silicon Valley, and Cornell Alumni Affairs and Development staff. So without further ado, I want to welcome our guests this evening, Adel and Kai, MPA class of 07. Hi, Adeline.
Hey.
Thank you so much for being with us. And Randall Davies, class of 95.
Hello, it's a pleasure to speak with all of you.
Yes, well, thank you so much for joining. And again, for those of you watching along, if you have questions, burning questions, you can tweet them using the hashtag CSV16. But I want to start with a few questions of my own. And I think this is a fun one. I'm curious to know from each of you, and maybe Adel, and I'm going to throw this to you first. When you're in passing, someone hears that you went to Cornell, or you hear a mention of Cornell, what is the picture that pops into your mind?
Definitely the campus. I spent a lot of time hanging out in the ag quad, so that's usually my first memory of Cornell, and it was just so beautiful, and it is still beautiful. I just recall watching the seasons change, like that was just very impactful on me. Not being an American and not having grown up in a country where there were 4 seasons, Cornell's environment was just really special to me. So I grew up in Singapore where it's just super tropical all the time, and so getting exposure to the gorges and like the very unique sort of ecology of the area, I just recall that very, very strongly.
And so when you have that picture of campus, what season is it?
It's usually fall, but I think it's one of my favorite seasons. And then when I was there, one Valentine's Day was like one of the worst storms I guess Ithaca had ever experienced, and the whole campus shut down, which I think is really, really rare. So I also have that mental image of fall and then that winter.
Excellent. So, Randall, different picture, similar picture come to mind when you think of Cornell?
They're very similar. It's interesting. I have this aerial view of the campus that I must have seen at some point stick in my head, and stretching from the Arboretum all the way down to the lake. I was on the crew, on the Cornell crew during my time there, and so really, having had that experience on the lake and the inlet and studying at the Arboretum, and of course, just like Adeline, spending a heck of a lot of time, in my case, also on the Ag Quad, the whole campus itself seemed like a playground to me, and honestly, that's the one that sticks with me the most. And it's a picture in the summer, although I'm from Rochester, so no stranger to snow. Um, but I think it was probably those days when it was it was the warmest, and we were out on the lake or hanging out in the arboretum that really still stink in. It was a wonderful place.
Do you recall any epic winter days where the campus actually shut down?
I think we were still running down the hill to the boathouse, so I never really felt like it all shut down. They didn't let us off the hook too often for indoor training, but yeah, I mean, it kind of all blends together. But I actually love the snow, frankly.
So, Rin, I'll keep firing questions at you. You're on the crew team, and what were you studying? Did you have time to also study?
We did. No, we definitely tried to keep up that end of the bargain. I was an ag-ec major. I actually transferred into Cornell. I came in as a pre-med. I was rowing in a pretty small, undeveloped program at a school called Kenyon College. And for me, Cornell was an opportunity to step it up both academically as well as athletically. And so I let most of the pre-med curriculum go and kept on with applied economics. And that served me, it's really served me well in the following, almost 20 years now, I guess.
Great. So I think a common story for Cornellians is a change of major or an inspiration that happens on campus that kind of shifts focus. Adeline, did you come in with a clear path, and did you stick to that?
Yeah, I came in as a grad student, so I wasn't, I didn't go through the undergrad experience. So I was only at Cornell for 2 years, and I came in explicitly for the Master's in Public Administration. And I knew I wanted to do something in, international development, because that was just something that I was really interested in. And I also did the jump from college to grad school, which I actually don't necessarily recommend, because there's so much learning that can happen in between those two phases of your life. So in my mind, I was like, oh, I want to do something to make the world a better place. And the MPA program, the CPAR program, really kind of captured my imagination, because it was so full of faculty and people who really cared genuinely about making the world a better place. So super idealistic. And I think I was sort of like, oh, maybe I'll look at like economics or something like that. But in the end, I ended up taking the human rights and social justice concentration, which was something that was really unique to the Cornell program that I don't think I've really seen at other schools. And so I kind of ended up really drilling down into that and building my own program, which was, again, like one of the most beneficial things about the CPAR program, was that you got to really take control and own what you were studying. So I was very grateful for that.
Great. So I'm really curious how you made the transition from that grad program to where you are now, and maybe just tell us a little bit about what you did right after graduation.
Yeah, so I graduated in '07, and that's when the market was starting to tank. And so it was kind of the dark times. I got out of Cornell, and I also had some personal issues when I was in the middle of graduating. And so I had kind of missed the boat on looking for jobs and all of that when I got out. So my sister at the time was living in Jersey City, so I ended up moving there because I had family there and didn't have a job. I ended up working at a friend's tea shop in exchange to sleep on her couch and for tip money while I was still trying to work out what I was going to do. And it was just very difficult because there weren't very many jobs for international development or human rights organizations that they were pulling their recs at that point. So I ended up going to a temp agency and just, because I was like really scraping the bottom of the barrel at that point. And they thankfully placed me with Google as a temp, and it was in their sales org, and I had no background in sales whatsoever. I actually failed my first test with them, but then they brought me back in for an in-person interview. So a lot of mistakes were made actually during this interim time, but I was very, very fortunate that they took a chance on me, and I ended up in tech, and I didn't really have an understanding of like, oh, like this whole tech thing, right? I wanted to be digging wells for people, and not, sort of being an AdWords keyword generator. And that's sort of how I ended up in tech, and eventually they really helped me grow my career. I had some pretty good managers who saw that the skill set that I had brought in from Cornell was really useful for some of these other projects that they were working on, and I slowly worked my way into a policy job at Google that parlayed into other opportunities later on.
Great. Well, we'll come back to that. Randall, tell me about the time for you just after graduation. You're from upstate New York, so did you stay in upstate New York? Did you take off?
I had this fascination with Boston for some reason, and I let.
Was it the Charles?
I was probably a girlfriend involved at one point, or somebody who inspired me while I was in school. But I felt like, aside from New York, that was the place to be. I had a real interest still, despite kind of abandoning my pre-med education, a real interest in trying to be at an intersection of medicine and technology, and I knew there was quite a bit going on there. But of course, you can't always get what you want right out of the gate. And but yet I was able to join a small consulting firm that was working with some good name companies like General Electric and so on. And what was intriguing to me is it was described that they basically said, here's the only challenge, is that you're hardly going to do any work in the United States. And I thought, that's fantastic. So a few weeks after I joined, as a very naive undergrad, I found myself in just outside a city in the Netherlands, working on projects and advising, people who were in the middle of their career as executive managers at General Electric, and that was a real shock. Huge learning opportunity, but it was a very small firm, so it also felt entrepreneurial, and that was kind of another theme that had kind of locked me on early on. So after, kind of having that feeling of I don't like to walk away from projects that I've gotten started, as many people in consulting do, found my way into venture capital. And in those days, you weren't even expected to know what venture capital was. When you talked to a firm, I mean, it was positions weren't even advertised. There weren't that many companies. But I was fortunate enough, actually through a Dartmouth rower of all things, to get hired into his team in Boston again. And after a number of years in private equity, realized that kind of launching products and being on the operating side and being in the trenches was really what I found most fulfilling. And so I went to Columbia to kind of make the jump and moved over to an operating environment after that. And I'm still here, and my friends in private equity are probably retired by now, but having a ton of fun and have had the chance to be at startups. And the company I joined prior to Under Armour, we were acquired by Under Armour, so part of an exit, and was at PayPal for a number of years. So it's really been an interesting journey, and finding myself now back at the intersection of health and technology at an incredible time for that industry. So circuitous journey, but it's been a great one, and I've been in touch with really Cornell the whole way.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'll just ask you this since you're leading me there. How do you stay? Do you stay in touch with other alumni? What's that like now that you're on the West Coast?
I've never. When I moved out in '08, it was like planes were flying west from Boston full of people, emptying out the Northeast and landing at Google and Facebook, and the movers told me that they had, literally moved 4 other, families, from the same area in the last month. So that kind of said to me, like, hey, I've got to try to find a way to amplify Cornell's presence here and try to help bring all these things that are going on in the Valley back east. And I can't say I've accomplished that mission really in any way yet, But throughout the years, of course, my rowing friends, we've been very, very tight, and I'm even looking for ways now to involve the rowing team in some of the wearables technology and nutrition technology that we're developing here. But it's just, it's going to CSV every few years, and other networking events that are much more local, right downtown here in San Francisco, and just trying to learn what's going on and what people are working on, what research projects are happening at the university. And lo and behold, there are some things in nutrition that are going on that are really relevant to what we're doing here at Under Armour now. So I think it's been fairly opportunistic, but once I think the older I grow, the more I really want to tighten the connection and really try to keep Cornell super relevant here, and and of course keep undergraduates looking at Cornell as a place to go to get hooked into the whole tech scene.
Great. What about you, Adeline? Are you staying in touch with other alumni?
Yeah, definitely. So with my own cohort from SIPA, we are very, very close. I have 3 friends in particular, like the 4 of us, we're just a really tight-knit group of friends, and we're still constantly pinging each other on Facebook, traveling together. One of my friends recently had a baby, so it's been really, kind of fun to watch people move through their lives after Cornell. In particular, I'm actually really interested as a policy person in tech, looking at getting more Cornell students interested in other aspects of what might be going on in Silicon Valley besides engineering, because we know we have a really, really strong engineering school, but there are also so many other roles that need to be filled at tech companies, and I think people are getting more exposed to the different kind of roles that one could have at a tech company. But when I came in, as like a salesperson at Google, I had no idea, right? My impression of tech was like, oh, I'm not a computer science major. Like, what value do I have to bring? And that's utterly false. There's so much opportunity at a tech company beyond just computer science. So I was actually really fortunate that an alum from the SIPA program reached out to me a couple years ago, and she was fantastic in just the way she told me about her background and what she was really, really interested in. And as the conversation moved along, an internship on my team opened up, and we ended up interviewing her, and she came on board as an intern, and we actually hired her the following year. And I'd love to be able to see more of that happen with alumni connections. I know that happens a lot maybe in other aspects of other industries, but I feel like I personally haven't seen it all that much with policy issues and content policies in tech. So I'd love to be able to connect more on that level. And I know the College of Human Ecology has started doing a lot of, now that SIPA is incorporated under the College of Human Ecology, they're doing a lot more outreach, which is really, really helpful. So I'd just like to be able to continue having more connections with especially SIPA alum, because I'm just so close to that program, so I have a lot of bias there.
Great. Well, so another thing I'm curious about, now that you are on the West Coast, when was the last time each of you visited Ithaca? Graduation?
I actually haven't been back, very sadly, and I really would love to make it back, but just haven't made the time, but I want to.
We'll have to come up with an excuse for that.
Yes, that'd be helpful. I went back for my 5- and 10-year reunions, and I was just thinking about that, that it's literally been almost another 10 years since, or I guess it has. I'm really, hoping to, now I've got a wife and kids, and, my wife is a Harvardian, and she hasn't seen the campus yet, and I'm going to show her how much better it is than what she had in Boston one of these days, and I want to show the kids too. So I'm looking forward to getting back, and I know there's, the entrepreneurship, I think the big entrepreneurship meeting that happens in the springtime. I'm kind of determined to get there for that one of these years coming soon.
That's a good time of year.
Yeah.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about CSV 16 and Adeline, if you could start just by, maybe we haven't really talked about what you're doing right now. So tell us a little bit about being head of policy at Pinterest and what brings you to the CSV 16 stage this year. I've got you on mute.
Sorry, some technical issues with my browser. What I do right now at Pinterest, so I run the policy team, and usually there's some confusion about like, well, what does policy really mean? So my team doesn't work on the public policy side where we're doing outreach with parties that are outside of the company. We're really focused on our product policies, so this involves anything to do with content on the platform and behavior on the platform. So I cover things like, what is our position on nudity when it shows up on the platform? Like, what do we do about it? What do we do about the content and behavior that advertisers are allowed to exhibit on the platform? So making sure that we're keeping Pinterest a great place for people to discover the things that they love and go out and do those things. So we consider ourselves sort of the gatekeepers of solid quality content and making sure that people have a really good experience and their flow isn't disrupted as they're going through Pinterest. So that's kind of basically what my team does.
Great. And as a user, thank you for doing that job.
Thanks for using Pinterest. We hope you keep using it.
So what brings you to the CSV 16 stage? I know you're doing a talk, and without any big spoilers, what maybe it's the title and a little teaser.
Yeah, so the title is really about content moderation and tools and codes for content moderation. And really, what I'll be talking about is not necessarily how if you're running a content or user-generated content-based platform, how you should exactly perform the function of keeping it a great place for your users, but really kind of throwing out questions on a framework for thinking about content moderation. I think very often, it's easy to step into this sort of role and think like, yeah, well, this is allowed, this is not allowed, this stays up, we remove that. But there's actually a really broad range of actions that one could take on a user who's violating your policies, and just throwing out questions as to why it's important to moderate content, what that actually does at a very practical level for your company, but also what that does for your users when you're actually thinking about putting their experience first. So just kind of frameworking that, and maybe sharing some questions to think about as you work on your platform.
Great. I am now very jealous that I won't be there, and will be hoping that there will be a Periscope popping up during your presentation. Randall, tell us what you're up to now. I know you don't have an individual talk, but you have a very important moderating job at CSV 16.
Well, we're gonna try to make it relevant. So I run corporate and business development here at Under Armour Connected Fitness, and Connected Fitness is a relatively new division of Under Armour. Most everybody's familiar with the apparel business, but in the last 18 months, Under Armour spent a little over $700 million acquiring 3 app companies, and assembled actually the largest community of both nutrition and fitness users in the world. About 167 million registered users now and counting. So we have this pretty tremendous asset of data and usage on people on the way they're eating and the way they are working out and in sleeping now. And then we at the Consumer Electronics Show, we launched a suite of hardware products. So we are now effectively competing with Fitbit, with a band and a scale and a heart rate monitor and a pair of connected shoes that track your runs without your phone being in your hand, and even a pair of headphones that will track your heart rate that come out in a few months. So putting all that together, I'm going to be moderating a panel on the Internet of Things. And I think, as everybody knows, there's probably an Internet of Things panel somewhere in the world every week, maybe a couple per week. And I think the challenge then, and hopefully what we can bring to CSV is a panel that's more grounded in how this massively broad topic that everybody hears about a lot is actually impacting us as people and individuals and end users. I think there's a lot of talk about it, but everybody kind of thinks hard sometimes about how has it actually changed my life so far, or when is it likely to? And hopefully my position, at a company like this, and wearing things on my wrists all day long, and being in the business of tracking some pretty important activity and kind of your overall self, as well as a few other panelists who will hail from areas like entertainment and even foundational technologies and sensors and so forth, can give the Cornell attendees a real good picture of what's going on in the industry. I'd love to give those who want to be entrepreneurs in the space some inside looks and views and insights into opportunities and possibly even things to look out for. That all of us have learned about over the few years that this has really been taking off as a segment.
Great.
So
I think that's one of the things I love about that event is that the topics are broad. It's relevant for consumers. It's relevant for entrepreneurs. It's relevant for users. As someone who is a band and wearer and a connected scale user, really interesting topics. Again, I'm rethinking where I should be on March 8th, and I hope our viewers of this broadcast are thinking the same thing. With the last couple of minutes that we have here, I just want to hear what it is about CSV 16 that, besides those two great pitches for presentations that are happening, but what else happens at the event, if you've attended before, or if there are things that you're especially looking forward to that you would say to encourage or even friends to attend on March 8th. What do you think, Adeline?
I'm actually especially excited about attending for the first time and looking at the agenda. There are a whole bunch of great talks that people are giving, and because the tech industry is just so broad, there are just a lot of issues that one could really go deeply into. I think it's a great opportunity to actually seek out people who are maybe interested in a similar niche as you, and get really knee deep into sort of the issues that you might be grappling with through your own work, or if you're launching your own company. There are people there who have maybe failed a lot of times and have great learning from that, or who have succeeded as a result of that failure. I'm a big believer in hearing about stories of where things have gone wrong and how you can sort of move out from that. And I think just the work ethic of a lot of Cornellians that I've met have kind of pushed through that. We learn from a lot of our mistakes, and tech is a great industry where people fail fast and learn really fast as well. So I'm especially excited about that. I'm actually really, really interested in the Airbnb talk as well. Just because I find it such an interesting business model, and from a policy nerd perspective, the safety issues that they grapple with are so fascinating and also so impactful on users that I'd love to just kind of, make a connection there and learn more about what they're doing.
Great. I'm sure you'll have the opportunity to do that. How about you, Randall? Have you been to this event in the past?
I have not, and certainly not in this capacity. So like Adeline, I'm just looking forward to being a part of it. It's probably the one Silicon Valley activity I really haven't been a part of in the past. So definitely there, and I think Adeline, you're pretty inspiring in what you said. But to me, life ends up being really about being inspired and learning. And when you're doing that with people you have a kind of a unique connection with, that adds some, I think, possibilities for, maybe you'll work together, maybe you can spark an idea. It makes it all that more real. So I think that's why, to me, something like this, which is really all about Cornellians, is that much more exciting and tangible. So I don't know. I think it's just it's a great possible melting pot for lots of different Cornellians to make some connections and certainly learn some things. And if more Cornellians could become dominant in a space that's taking off, I think our goal that most of us have of making sure that the university is on the cutting edge in the future and has great, organic recruiting power, we can make sure that happens. So I just want to give Cornellians a bit of an edge in this whole thing and trade some really unique insights. And I think, as Adeline said, the panel's so diverse that there's no way anybody gets bored with topics, and they're all timely and so forth. And so I think there's a lot of things that could spring out of this, and that's why I'm excited.
Well, I'm happy that we have both of you out on the front lines, fighting the good fight for Cornell's journey to the bleeding edge. And as someone who has been to this event, I was there at CSV 14, and I can just say that the space is fantastic. The space for networking is really great. People have a lot of time to be able to connect and have some really great conversations outside of the presentation. So there's all of those good things to look forward to. We are at time. I want to thank my guests again for joining me, and the Cornell Alumni Association, Cornell Silicon Valley, Cornell Alumni and Affairs and Development staff for making this broadcast possible. And we hope that you're all able to follow along with CSV 16, the hashtag. If you're not able to make it there on March 8th during the event, follow along the hashtag. We will try to have some periscoping happening so that you don't have CSV 16 FOMO. But registration is still open. We hope that you are in the area. If you are going to be in the area March 8th, that we will see you there in person. So thank you, Randall, and thank you, Adeline. It was so nice spending this half hour with you.
Thank you, Ashley. And thanks, Adeline.